Hey, Warrior Saints, what's happening? Happy Thursday. I'm very excited to be here with you today to talk about something that we're going to get to in just a minute. We've been talking about monsters all week, so I was inspired by our Warrior Saints challenge to go back into the way of the Warrior Saint, how to live a crucifixional life, which is, of course, available on warriorsaints.org/book, and look at chapter 4, Fighting Monsters, just to look at it again, and it brings up a lot of stuff that we are always dealing with, things that these monsters in our lives that are around all of the time. So for today, for the Warrior Saints Challenge, I read that chapter about fighting monsters, and later this afternoon, my wife and I are planning to take a very long walk with our beautiful little daughter, just to enjoy the wonderful sunshine that is Arizona. Don't forget to visit all of our platforms and post your comments on a chapter that you're reading in The Way of the Warrior Saint, How to Live a Crucifixional Life, and then also post about your exercise so we know what you are doing as well as we are getting our minds and our bodies in check. So fighting monsters is something that we've been talking about all week. And the other day, and again in that chapter, Father Chris uses the image of the Balrog from the Lord of the Rings. I'm going to use a different character from Lord of the Rings, and we're going to talk about kind of a little bit of a heavy topic today, but something that is pretty powerful in all of our lives, and we all feel it at some point or another. Gollum. There's this wonderful scene in The Lord of the Rings where Gollum is trying to take the ring. The first time we see him in the second of the three movies, interacting with Frodo, he jumps on Frodo's back. And they have like a little tussle. And eventually Frodo throws Gollum off of his back, is able to win the battle. Gollum says, please don't kill me, please don't kill me. And he ends up staying with Frodo and Sam throughout the entirety. And he's with them for the whole rest of their journey. Now, while Gollum is sitting on their back, he's kind of holding Frodo back from what Frodo is needing to be doing. And then they think that he's become an ally, and yet he's still walking with them the whole way. And I think while he's walking with them, the image that I'd like for us to see is that he is still holding them back, and he is still on their backs. He's still that monkey on their back. Now, today's monster that we're going to talk about is not Gollum. Gollum is simply the metaphor that we're using and the image that I wanted to conjure up. Because we all have that monkey on our back. We all have that Gollum that we think is now under control, that we think is now our friend. And every so often, it rears its ugly head. There's a lot of change happening in the world around us right now. And as human beings, that change, as we've looked at, produces fear, produces anger, but we experience that fear the same way that we experience loss, the same way that we experience grief. And that often leads to our third monster for this week, kind of depression. Something that holds us down, something that keeps us back. That Gollum character in our own lives that is pulling us down at some points, that is holding us from what we know we need to be doing. It's keeping us from our mission often. And we sometimes think we have it under control, and it's still rearing its other ugly head. It's still popping up. Because anytime we feel something change, and we start to feel that change in our lives again, we start to fear, we start to get angry, and it ultimately can lead to that depression, to that sadness, to feeling like there's no hope. Now, I want to put a disclaimer out there. I am not in the mental health field, and I am not talking about clinical depression. But I am talking about what we often experience in our overly dramatic way of saying, oh my God, I'm so depressed. Oh my God, I got a B and I don't know what to do. I'm so depressed. I work with kids, and that's often what they talk about, is their depression because of their grades or because of this. It's not depression, friends. We're sad, and it's okay to be sad. What is not okay is when we let that sadness hold us back. When we stop to see the hope that we have, to see the light at the end of that tunnel, to see that there is still a promise on the other side. And we're going to look today at two Psalms that don't seem like they go together at all, but that I think go together beautifully. The first is Psalm 22, and the second is Psalm 23. Now, we all know Psalm 23. Anyone that's been to a funeral service, whether mostly in the non-Orthodox funeral service you see this. Orthodox funeral services, we don't have it in the service itself, but we often will see it printed on cards, or just see it as something to keep us calm. You know, the Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me to lie down beside the still waters. I mean, that's beautiful. And we're going to see why that is so beautiful. But what we forget is that it comes after Psalm 22. Psalm 22 starts with the words that Christ himself uses while on the cross. My God, why have you forsaken me? Why have you forgotten me? Where are you? In the Septuagint text, it goes so far and says, my God, listen to me. Like that teenager or child who is just screaming out for attention, that is wanting to be heard, that is wanting to be seen, that is needing something. And yet it goes on, and we hear in verse 2, I cry by day, but thou dost not answer, and by night, but I find no rest. We see this so often in our own lives, where we feel like we're crying out for God because we only cry out when we need something. And he doesn't hear us. He doesn't answer us. Because we're not necessarily walking along the path of the warrior saint. Because we're not necessarily following the path of crucifixional living. Because we feel hopeless. Because we've lost sight of what is truly important. And as you go on to read Psalm 22, it's riddled with these feelings that we can only describe as what we say, as what we mean when we say, I'm just lost, I feel depressed, I don't know where I'm going. And we've had enough of that this year. We've had a lot of that this year. And it continues to go on. And we continue to lose sight, because every time something changes, we blow that little change way out of proportion and assume that everything is the end of the world. And when everything is the end of the world, we really start to believe our own press releases, and we lose sight of what is truly important. And after hearing all of this, all of this throughout Psalm 22, we hear things like, deliver me from my soul from the sword, my life from the power of the dog, save me from the mouth of the lion, my afflicted soul from the horns of the wild oxen. I mean, the imagery is despondency. It is despair. It is that monkey on our back. It is Gollum attacking us, rearing his ugly head constantly, telling us, I'm keeping you from what you need to be doing. And we let it. We welcome it. We invite him to walk along with us and to continue along our journey. We don't allow ourselves to remember what we hear in Psalm 23. What is the power that is in Psalm 23? And it's not what we think it is. I'm going to read for you, and we're going to pop some of it up on the screen. The Lord is my shepherd, I shall not want. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. He restores my soul. He leads me in the paths of righteousness for his name's sake. That is beautiful. That is tranquil. That is peaceful. That is calm. That is not what we do. Do we allow the Lord to actually guide us? Do we allow him to lead us beside the still waters? Or do we focus on the raging waters like Peter does, as we heard 2 days ago and yesterday, where we just see the swarming storm around us, lose sight of Christ, and sink? We forget what we hear in verse 4. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I fear no evil, for thou art with me. The Lord is with us. He is walking with us. He is leading us along the path of crucifixional living. He is helping us to break through the darkness that we feel in our lives, to get that monkey off of our backs, so that we can follow him along the path. Now, it's interesting what we hear right after that. Thy rod and thy staff, they comfort me. What are the rod and the staff for? They're to fight off the golems of this world. They're to keep us safe from the craziness that is going on around us. It's not that it's just passive. We trust in God and everything's going to be all right. No, we have to still do the work. We have to still recognize that change is going to come. And that when we see that change, we are going to experience that change the same way that we experience loss, which is going to come with grief, which may come with feelings of sadness and depression. But it's okay, because the Lord is our shepherd, and he has his rod and staff. He has his rod and his staff as the shepherd who needs to fight off the wolves. And it goes further in verses 5 and 6. Thou preparest a table before me. Where's that table? In the presence of mine enemies. Brothers and sisters, it's not going to be easy. It's not like he's just taking away everything from us. There's still going to be enemies around us. But what he shows us is how we respond to that change and how we respond to being surrounded by those enemies. Because he anoints our heads with oil and our cup overflows. Surely goodness and mercy follow us all the days of our lives, and we will dwell in the house of the Lord forever. But we can't get to the house of the Lord without going to that table that's in the midst of our enemies. Without seeing that Christ is with us in the midst of the swirling, raging seas, which we see and experience as still waters, because we have our eyes on him, because we are following the path that is crucifixional living, because we are overcoming the crap that is trying to hold us down. And we are saying, we will not allow you to keep us back. We're saying, ain't nobody going to hold us down. Nobody's going to break our spine. We're going to keep going. We're going to follow that path of crucifixional living, and we are going to get on the way of the warrior saint. Today, we're done. We want to know how to do it. We're all in the fight together, and we're building this army so that we can get to where we need to go, which is the house of the Lord, where we will dwell forever. It's that simple. It's not simple, but it is something that we can all do when we work together, when we come together, when we work together. And you know what happens when we work together? We don't feel alone. We have people around us that can say, that's just Gollum. We probably shouldn't have him around right now. Like, imagine if Frodo had listened to Sam all the time Sam said to get rid of Gollum, and had listened to the words, that conscience that was right there, trying to guide him, trying to keep his path straight. Would have been a very different experience for him. We want you to have that experience. We want you to get on the way of the warrior saint today so that you can understand the how that goes along with the why that we are always talking about, so that you too can fight your monsters. Till we see you tomorrow, keep walking on the way of the warrior saint.